Is Max Verstappen really back in the title fight, or are we just watching the final act of a desperate comeback? From being laughed at over a Nürburgring lap time to storming back with consecutive wins, Max has flipped the script, and now Singapore under lights could be the race that decides everything. Formula One is theatre as much as it is sport, and right now Max Verstappen is reminding us all why he's the central character in so many of its most gripping storylines. Champions are often measured by their ability to dominate, to win without breaking a sweat. But what really defines greatness is the response to pressure, to criticism, to those rare moments when the cloak of invincibility looks frayed. In recent weeks, Verstappen has lived that narrative in full, from being mocked for a lap time at the Nürburgring to powering back into the title picture with consecutive wins. The result is a season that has been turned on its head. The spark came at the legendary Nordschleife, a track that has broken reputations and created myths for decades. Verstappen took part in an outing there that should have been nothing more than an interesting sideshow, but instead it set tongues wagging. A rival dismissed one of his laps as laughable, as if to say that perhaps Max was a creature of Red Bull dominance alone, not someone whose talent could translate elsewhere. It was a jab designed to sting, and sting it did, but instead of lashing out, Verstappen kept his cool. He pointed out the obvious. On a circuit that long and that complex, lap times can be distorted by traffic, track conditions, even a single mistake in one of the Nordschleife's corners. It's not easy to time your run well here, he admitted. On my last lap, I ran into way too much traffic to make a good lap. There was humility in that, but also quiet defiance, because he knew his performance needed no grand defense. What made the moment more powerful is how Verstappen handled it. He didn't try to bury the criticism with words, he buried it with action. Back in Formula One, the results came quickly. In Italy, he drove with precision, reminding everyone that Monza might as well be his playground. In Baku, he was ruthless. Pole position secured, race won, pace control from start to finish. These were not lucky breaks or chaotic races that fell his way, they were controlled demonstrations of speed and confidence. And just like that, the narrative shifted from, is Verstappen vulnerable, to, is Verstappen about to surge? The timing of his resurgence could not have been better, because the championship picture had started to look one-sided. Oscar Piastri and McLaren had stolen the headlines earlier in the year, building a lead that made many wonder if the fight was already over. But Verstappen's wins reopened the question. He remains 69 points adrift of Piastri, which is a sizable gap, but Formula One history is littered with title swings far larger than that. And momentum counts for more than maths in this sport. 2 wins on the bounce, with Red Bull upgrades slotting neatly into the car, have forced everyone to rethink the championship's complexion. Inside McLaren, there is no sense of complacency. Zak Brown has described Verstappen as a disruptor in the title race, an acknowledgement that the Dutchman cannot be ignored. Andreas Stella has gone further, saying that Verstappen is definitely back in the championship conversation. Those comments show respect, but also unease. Because if McLaren thought they could cruise to the finish, those illusions are gone. Piastri, so impressive all season, now has to deal with a Red Bull snapping at his heels and a Verstappen who thrives on the scent of a comeback. There is also the psychological dimension. Verstappen admitted recently that he wondered if we could still turn it around. That kind of honesty is rare from a driver of his stature, because champions are expected to always project invincibility. But what makes that admission fascinating is the way he has answered the question for himself. He wondered, yes, but then he went out and won. And that says more about his mental strength than any streak of easy victories ever could. When you are doubted, even for a moment, and you respond with dominance, that's when your legacy is forged. Now, all eyes turn to Singapore. Marina Bay is unlike anything else on the calendar. It is humid, hot, physically exhausting, and mentally brutal. The circuit demands precision for 62 laps, with concrete walls waiting to punish even the slightest error. Historically, Red Bull has sometimes struggled there, the car sensitive to the heat and the high downforce demands of the track. Helmut Marko himself has admitted that Singapore is not always a comfortable fit, but Verstappen's recent form changes the equation. The car looks sharper, the upgrades have bedded in, and the team has renewed confidence. For Max, this is both a challenge and an opportunity. Conquer Marina Bay, and the comeback narrative becomes a full-blown title charge. So what should we watch for? First, qualifying. On a street circuit like Singapore, track position is king. Passing is possible, but it's punishing. A front row start is almost mandatory if Verstappen wants to control the race. Second, tyre management. In the tropical heat, degradation is brutal, and strategy calls can make or break a Sunday. Third, the inevitable safety cars. Singapore has a knack for chaos, and Max will need to navigate that chaos better than anyone else. If he can master all three, the deficit to Piastri could shrink, and the pressure could flip back onto McLaren. Piastri, of course, isn't standing still. He has shown composure well beyond his years, but his last two outings exposed cracks, mistakes in qualifying, jump starts, even crashes that cost him dearly. That means Singapore is not just a race for Verstappen to win, it's a race for Piastri to prove he can handle the heat. Literally and metaphorically. The young Australian is talented, no question, but titles are won as much in moments of resilience as in moments of dominance. Verstappen knows that better than anyone, and he will be waiting for any sign of weakness. Looking beyond Singapore, the United States Grand Prix looms large. Austin has always been a driver's track, one where rhythm and aggression meet. If Verstappen carries momentum from Marina Bay to Austin, the narrative could shift entirely. From there, the calendar accelerates toward its crescendo, with Mexico, Brazil, and the Middle East finales offering little respite. That's why Singapore is being billed as a turning point. Get it right, and Verstappen has a fighting chance. Get it wrong, and the gap may simply be too big to close. For fans, this is the perfect storm. On one side, a young star in Piastri who has surprised everyone with his maturity and pace. On the other, a three-time champion in Verstappen, stung by criticism, rejuvenated by victories, and hungry to remind the world that his era is far from over. Add to that the unpredictability of street circuits, the constant evolution of cars with upgrades, and the ever-present threat of rain in Singapore, and you have a recipe for drama. The Nürburgring saga that began with a dismissive laugh now feels like ancient history, a footnote in a season that is evolving by the week. Verstappen has absorbed the criticism, turned it into determination, and delivered where it counts. He has reminded us that titles are not won by avoiding doubt, but by crushing it. As he heads into Marina Bay, the message is clear. Underestimate Max Verstappen at your peril. Because in Formula One, the margins are razor thin, the narratives change fast, and champions are made not in dominance, but in defiance. Verstappen has been questioned, he has been doubted, and now he is answering. One race at a time, one victory at a time, with the entire paddock watching. And Singapore, under the lights, might just be the race that tells us if this season will be remembered as Piastri's coronation or Verstappen's greatest comeback yet.